Welcome to the webinar Exporting Immune Boosting Botanicals to Europe, organized by CBI. My name is Thomas Vonk and I'm working for CBI in the Market Intelligence team. First, we start with some house rules. As you can read on the screen, we cannot see or hear you. And please ask your questions via the Questions tab on the right of your screen. And we will answer hopefully most of the questions. We will not guarantee that we can answer all the questions during this webinar. There's like 15 minutes reserved for it at the end of this webinar. There will be a recording of this session and that will be published on our website and on the CBI YouTube channel. And we will also send you an email with the presentations of today when you're registered. At the end, we will ask you to complete a short survey. At the end of agenda for today, I will start with a brief introduction of CBI, who we are and what we do, and then Jolanda van Hal from Vonk Advisors in Development will start the main presentation, Exporting Immune Boosting Botanicals to Europe. Vonk Advisors is a supplier for CBI for market information in the sector natural ingredients for health products, but also in the sectors coffee and cocoa. During the presentation of Jolanda, she will interview Nick Salter, who is a co-founder of Aduna. Aduna is a superfood brand, and Nick's focus is on developing new value chains that connect small producers into the global economy by creating demand for underutilized ingredients. He will introduce himself and Aduna more once the interview will start. And at the end, we have some time reserved for answering your questions, which again, you can during the whole presentation, you can just type your questions in the Questions tab on the right of your screen. CBI is the Center for the Promotion of Imports from Developing Countries. We are part of the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, and we are funded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Netherlands. Our mission is to support the transition towards inclusive and sustainable economies. We strengthen the social, economic and environmental sustainability of small and medium enterprises in developing countries by connecting them to European and regional markets. We thereby promote and create decent jobs, pay special attention to women and youth, and we support women in management positions and women entrepreneurs. With our work, we directly contribute to the four Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, which is number 8, decent work and economic growth, number 5, gender equality, number 12, responsible consumption and production, and number 17, partnerships for the goals. CBI currently can start new projects in 24 countries. These countries are determined by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which funds us. And as you can see on this map, currently it's mainly Africa and some in Middle East and Asia. We are active in, we can start new projects in 13 sectors now. We at this moment still have 14 sectors on our website. These are the 13 sectors we are from 2023. We will be active in, and we will probably add one more sector or two. These are currently the sectors we can start new projects in, and you see the natural food additives, you see the natural ingredients for health products, and you see also the natural ingredients for cosmetics. So we have like 3 sectors in natural ingredients. In our projects, we work, of course, with the producers and SME exporters, which is our main target group, but we also work together to get a better value chain and to get the whole sector on a higher level with government organizations, knowledge institutions, NGOs, and international organizations, which are mostly other donor organizations. So CBI products focus on sustainable production and export as a means to create decent jobs. We always work on long-term sector development from the perspective of a locally shared vision, and therefore we also make use of local knowledge. Our projects are usually a 4-year export coaching program with individual trainings, coaching, and market entry activities. So trainings are, for example, on certification, or on just improving the quality of the product. And coaching is also on marketing and export marketing and finding buyers. And we have market entry activities, like we take them to European fairs where they can exhibit their products or services. Please visit our website for the projects. At this moment, we have 2 projects open for application, which is a macadamia product in Kenya and a shea project for in Nigeria. A second very important pillar of CBI is the market information. For all sectors, we have an extensive number of market information studies on our website. The studies answers questions such as which countries offer the most opportunities for a product or service, and what channels should you use to enter the market in your sector, and what laws and requirements must you follow. So please visit our website, cbi.eu/market information, to look if there's any valuable studies for your product or service or sector. Now I will give the floor to Jolanda for her main presentation.
Thank you, Thomas. Let me just share my screen with you all. Can you see my screen, Thomas?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining today. My name is Jolanda, and in the next little over half hour, I'm going to take you through some trends and developments and how to enter the market for immune boosting botanicals. These are outcomes of a study that we as Profound conducted, which will be published on the CBI website later in the year. So if you want more insights and more information, please make sure you check out that study as well. Brief of what I'll be going through. First, I'll start with a short introduction. Also, what are immune boosting botanicals? Then I'll guide you through some trends and developments on the market, some insights in how to enter the market, and then we have an interview with Nick Salter from Aduna, as Thomas already mentioned, who has a lot of experience himself and would love to hear from some of his insights. And then indeed we have some time for Q&A, so please just put all your questions in the chat and we'll try to go through as many as possible at the end of today's session. First, let me give you a brief introduction of Profound, which is the company I work for. We're a consultancy based in the Netherlands. Our mission is to support local income generation and sustainable sourcing by linking agricultural and natural ingredients producers to the markets. We do this with market information, market analysis, which we're here for today, but we also work with companies on compliance, helping them to comply with requirements on the market, as well as market entry, which is like the final step, introducing producers to the market. Myself, I've been working at Profound for over 9 years in trade promotion and market research projects. Also working with sustainable sourcing projects, linking natural ingredients producers to the market. And in addition to natural ingredients for health products, which is the focus of today's session, I also work with natural ingredients for cosmetics and food products. I also wanted to give you a brief overview of what are immune boosting botanicals, because really this is a term that we came up with, so it's good to explain a bit what we mean here. With immune boosting botanicals, it can be quite a big group. We mainly refer to medicinal and aromatic plants, but also some extracts, for example. And immune boosting properties come from three main groups. It can be dosed with high vitamin or mineral contents, such as Baobab that we see here, but also moringa. These nutrients really have an influence on the immune system. It can also be products with strong antioxidant activities, such as ginger, for example, but also turmeric, that supports the immune system in that way. Or it can be products or botanicals with anti-inflammatory, antiviral, or antibacterial properties, which again, something like turmeric, but also Echinacea, which is an example of a really well-known botanical as well for the immune system to deal with inflammatory issues as well. Most of the information that I'll share with you today will be focusing on food supplement segment. Which is where, if we talk about boosting an immune system, where most products are used in. But Echinacea actually is an example of a traditional herbal medicinal product. So there is a small market in there as well, but these are mostly focusing on relieving symptoms of a common cold or coughs, for example. So the immune boosting properties really come more from food supplements. So that's we'll focus on that. First, I wanted to just take you through some trends and developments that we've seen on the European market for immune support products. These are just some articles that I found online. There are many, many more. I'm sure you've seen some as well, especially during COVID pandemic, how the markets really, consumers increasingly demanded immune supporting products. To cope with the pandemic and make sure they don't become ill. This really, at the start of the pandemic, there was a big surge in demand for immunity products. And the question, of course, remains to what extent this demand will continue after the pandemic. There was already a big demand for immunity products before COVID as well, as people were more aware of healthy immune systems. And of course, the big surge in demand at first will most likely not continue. So, but to what extent exactly remains to be seen. But I wanted to just start off with a few insights on the market itself for immune support. The European market for immune supporting supplements was estimated at around 11 billion euros in 2020. At that time, also they predicted a market growth of over 6% annually between 2021 and 2026. So not the huge growth that we saw at the beginning of the pandemic, but still a healthy growth. As I mentioned already, market drivers on the one hand really was this growing health consciousness that was already happening before the pandemic as well, but really received a big boost during the pandemic. After COVID, demand will probably slow down, also because the growth at the start of the pandemic was not very sustainable growth, but will probably slow down a bit more. The market itself in Europe, there's a big market share for vitamins and minerals, which really take up the chunk of the market. But these also interesting because they can make authorized health claims, which for many botanicals are on hold, so not yet authorized. For vitamins and minerals, there are about 11, I think, authorized claims that can be made. There is a growing demand for botanicals at the same time, so there's good news. Some examples include ginger and turmeric that we've seen already in the previous slide as well, but lemongrass as well, and many others. Certain berries, for example, there really is a growing demand for natural ingredients to support healthy immune systems. I've gathered some information from 6 key markets and what opportunities you might find in those markets in Europe. I'm going through it quite briefly, just because I don't want to overwhelm you with information. I'll stick to the time a bit. So please, once the study is online, have a look there for more information, some more backgrounds, and how you can also do maybe some of your own research. The first market that I wanted to highlight is Germany. Germany is a real important market, an important importer and processor for botanicals. So not just immune boosting botanicals, but a wide range of botanicals, also used in different segments. But as for that reason, also an important market with opportunities. At the same time, demand for food supplements is growing quite substantially. It's one of the bigger markets in Europe, and has really been driven by a demand for consumers to support their immune system. And what's also interesting about the German market is that we believe that herbal products take up a significant share in food supplements, although of course vitamins, minerals will take the largest share. For example, one buyer I talked to mentioned that even before the pandemic, consumers were increasingly interested in herbal products. And a large share of German consumers believe that botanicals have some medicinal properties. So it has different roles as a market, but also definitely as a consumer market as well. France is a similar story. France is also an important importer, has a large processing industry, not just for immune boosting botanicals, also not just for the health product segment, cosmetic segment, of course, takes up a large share as well. But in the health products, so food supplements markets, immunity and vitality is a category that is performing really well and has really grown a lot during the pandemic, especially. So this category is still the largest category of products sold. I think at the beginning of the pandemic, or the second year of the pandemic, it grew by 13%. Also interesting about the French market is that according to the French Food Supplements Federation, a large share of food supplements sold in France include at least one plant. Same for the vitality and immunity category, where they actually list some plants that are commonly used, like ginseng, acerola, which you see more and more, and also Echinacea. France is one of the few markets where we have some data on organic food supplements as well. And this shows that that's growing faster than the normal, the total food supplement sales. So it's interesting to see as well. Italy is by far the largest food supplement market in Europe. Just to compare, the European market was valued at around 11 billion euros, and Italy takes up almost 4 billion of that market in 2020. So it's really the biggest market, also growing quite strongly even before the pandemic, grown by 8% per year. And a large share of the population just uses food supplements on a regular basis for things like feeling fitter and taking care of their body. What's also interesting to see is that immune stimulants had the strongest growth the last few years, together with vitamin supplements. So there's really a growing interest in those kinds of products on the market. Then we have three markets that are smaller in terms of their food supplements market size, but still interesting in different ways. First one, Spain, is a smaller market. The using food supplements is not as widespread as, for example, in Italy or Germany, but there has been strong growth over the last few years. And you see this also with new companies that are entering the market in brands and imports, etc. So that's an interesting thing to see. And again, supporting a good function of the immune system is one of the key reasons to use supplements in Spain. Spain also has an important or advanced plant extraction and training industry. So in that sense, just like France and Germany, they play an important role in the trade and processing of botanicals and medicinal aromatic plants. So in that sense, it might also offer some interesting opportunities. The UK has always had a strong demand for immune support, but also supplements that support general health. So in that sense, really interesting markets. The immune support aspect has grown a lot in recent years, but general health and wellness, which is also hardly, of course, immune support plays a role there as well, has always been the biggest chunk of demand. Another interesting development for the UK is that since Brexit, imports of medicinal aromatic plants have slowed down, so they've decreased in the last 5 years. But at the same time, direct imports of these botanicals from developing countries increased by an annual average rate of 6%. So we do see more direct imports from the UK from developing countries and less going through Europe. So that might be an interesting opportunity as well. And then the last market I wanted to cover is the Netherlands. This is, especially as a trade hub, offers interesting opportunities. Dutch imports of medicinal plants grew much stronger than the European average on the last 5 years. So interesting in that respect. And at the same time, we also have a growing food supplement market over here, where immune system has been a key driver for growth. And some popular supplements also include turmeric, for example, which is a supplement we see in many markets. Also, our CBI has a separate market information report on. So if you deal with turmeric, just go to the website and have a look at that. I wanted to take you through a few trends and sort of the implications of them if you want to enter this market. First one that I wanted to touch upon was sustainable sourcing and how that works out in this industry. By sustainable sourcing, I don't just mean organic or certified production, but much wider. Much more things are important for sustainable sourcing. Coming from different drivers also. So from consumer demands, for example, there's an increased interest in sustainable products, traceable products, knowing where something is coming from, where something originates from, and also a growing demand for organic certified products. For example, during COVID, the organic market in Europe grew by 15% from one year to the next. So this really has been an interesting market segment as well. From buyer demand, there's a different aspect for sustainable sourcing, with buyers becoming more involved in sustainable management of natural resources they use. So some companies can make investments in product development, documentation, market authorization for botanicals, really wanting to make sure that the supply of strategic ingredients is secured for the future as well. And very important also, of course, buyers would want you to supply sustainably in terms of quantity, in terms of quality, so that they're assured that you can have sustainable supplies in that way as well. Buyers also increasingly expect their suppliers to make supply chains more transparent, to make them more traceable, and to take more responsibility for the sustainability of their products. Some drives risk, again, with COVID-19 pandemic, but especially the supply chain issues around that, and some things that have been happening in this market for a longer time, such as contamination and adulteration issues. So in that sense, it's important to ensure traceable, transparent supply chains of sustainable products. Ooh, there we go. Another thing that I wanted to highlight is that especially the food supplement market is very competitive, definitely in a fast-growing category like immunity support products, which is one of the drivers for innovation in this market. There's also a demand for high-quality products, for natural ingredients that also fosters innovation. And at the same time, as consumers are now becoming more aware of the importance of healthy immune systems, manufacturers are cashing in by producing new products. So this leads to lots of innovation in this competitive market. It can be in product form. So I have one example here, which are immunity gummies. I talked to a buyer at VitaFoods who were saying that this was the newest innovation in the immunity sector and will probably grow more in the future as well. But also in terms of ingredients. And this, could lead to some interesting opportunities for botanicals. So what's important for especially new botanicals to enter the market is that you're very much aware of the nutrient profile. So you've done some research on it. What does this profile look like? What nutrients are in there? In what composition, etc. Because a lot of the health benefits are associated with those nutrients. So it's good to have this overview for your botanical. Another thing is to do some research on efficacy. It can be that you gather available research from scientific sources to make a database of articles that support your product, or you can maybe take an opportunity to build some research partnerships, do some of this research yourself. Depends a little bit on what resources you have. But it's important to know what your product is and what it can do in terms of immune support to share the story with your buyers. And that way also build a marketing story around those applications and around their use. And the last trend that I wanted to look at is, and this also comes from this the innovation trend within food supplements and immune support, is that consumers, because they're becoming more aware of the importance of a healthy immune system, also increasingly link it to other areas. So having a healthy immune system is linked to having less stress, more energy, sleep better, etc. And the other way around as well. More and more consumers recognize that your healthy digestive system also supports a healthy immune system. And brands on the market use this by offering products that have these multiple health indications. I have here two examples. One is a product that focuses on both immunity and energy and has separate ingredients for those health indications. And I also have another example of this immune electrolyte sports drink, which is a product that not normally would have an immune supporting aspect. But in this case, brands are really using this interest in immunity to add immune properties or claims to products that would not normally have them. Again, some interesting opportunities. On the one hand, for products or botanicals that already have an additional health benefit. Examples can be like adaptogens, which are balancing botanicals. And they have a normalizing action or are already used to support various things. So in addition to immunity, supporting stress or anxiety, increasing energy, etc. So these have an opportunity to in this category. And there are some opportunities for botanicals that are high in nutrients, like Baobab and Moringa, which can be used for multiple goals and for multiple health benefits. Having gone through this, I also wanted to, before we meet with Nick, just to go through some insights on how to enter the market and how does that look like, what to be aware of. First, I wanted to talk a little bit about the different segments on the market. As I mentioned before, food supplements are really the main segment for immune boosting botanicals, but there are also some herbal medicinal products on the market that focus more on cough and cold remedies, for example. It's very important for you to be aware of how your products will be used in the final market or which market segments you're targeting, because both of these have very distinctive requirements. Distinctive legal requirements, different buyers probably. So it's good to be aware of the segment you're focusing on, and what that implications that has for you as a supplier. Some small things on how these two segments differ. As I've already mentioned, the food supplements market is fast growing, there's strong competition and high innovation. So there's more things happening, and it's also a bit easier for new entrants to enter the market, new players. Whereas for herbal medicinal products, it's a smaller market. It's quite difficult to enter, both for new companies, but also especially for new ingredients. Because of legislation, it's very difficult to add new traditional herbal medicinal products. In terms of quality, there's also a big difference because the herbal medicinal products quality is set in monographs that specify the minimum quality requirements in terms of raw materials, production, processing, all these kinds of things. Whereas for food supplements, buyer specifications are more leading. Volumes are different, food supplements being a larger market, so also dealing with higher volumes. And in food supplements, there's more room for marketing stories because claims in food supplements are less strong than in herbal medicinal products. As I mentioned already, vitamins and minerals can make certain claims for immune supports. For botanicals, these are not yet authorized, or they're on hold, I should say. But in herbal medicinal products, you can make, for some specific products, make claims that this product helps the relief of symptoms of common cold, for example. Food supplements is more about function, so supporting a normal functioning of the immune system, for example. And buyer-supplier relationships are a bit different. There's more direct trade generally in herbal medicinal products because this allows buyers to have more control over their supply chain. Then when we look at how to enter the market, it's always good to have just this is a very simplified overview of a supply chain from an exporter country all the way to the different market segments that I just described. Just to show you some entry points into the market. The main one are generally importer distributors within Europe that can trade in lots of different species and then supply other European companies like processors or final product manufacturers. Another interesting point can be working with an agent. If you're newer to the market, it might help to work with an agent with a great network that can help you to get to know the right buyers for your products. Another entry point are more like the processors, manufacturers, which are more difficult to target. Let me explain a little bit more about how these differ. So as I mentioned, importers, distributors are an important channel. They are involved in lots of different activities like sourcing, quality control, documentation, and then selling products on to manufacturers and processors. The importers, distributors, they vary a lot. So we have more and more general players that are becoming larger, but also more specialized players. So it's really important for you as an exporter to figure out what kind of importer is the best fit for you to try and find that on the market. Specialized players, for example, can focus on organic certified products or only specific market segments, something like that. Agents do not buy products from you as importers do, but agents would work on your behalf. So they charge a commission rate and then they contact potential clients on your behalf, which if you're newer to the market can be beneficial as well. That's good to look into. And then the last entry point, processors and manufacturers, they mainly source their products through importers and distributors, but some are more looking towards buying directly from exporters, especially for those products that want more control over the supply chain, for example, or a more direct relationship with where products are coming from. If you are interested in targeting these companies directly, it's important to be aware that the requirements are quite high. So you need perfect documentation for your company, your products. You have to be able to ensure a consistent supply, quantity, and quality. And at the same time, your logistics needs to allow for supplying smaller volumes because these companies might only need a small volume for the production cycle, and this is also why normally they would buy more from importers who can buy bigger volumes. So before you target these, it's really important to figure out what kind of company works best for you. What experience do you have already to see what is the best fit? I have a few examples of exporters of immune boosting botanicals that are already targeting the European markets from different regions, different countries, and working with different products. Just like some examples of companies, how they do it, and maybe to see if you can get some inspiration from that. First company I wanted to look at is from Peru, a company called Fito Exports. What's interesting is Peru it's not a very large supplier of immune boosting botanicals or any botanicals for that matter to Europe, but Peru has a very strong reputation for superfoods as well as natural ingredients among European buyers. Very much built by Peru's national export promotion organization from Peru. It has really built its reputation with very successful marketing campaigns. This company, Fito Exports, builds on this image that Peru already has in Western Europe, and also offering products from Peruvian biodiversity. Some examples include cat's claw, which is more and more well known in Western Europe, especially for immune boosting properties, as well as turmeric, which is more known around the world. What they do in terms of processing, they have quite a short processing chain. They mainly dry and grind their products, which are then graded and packaged to be sold for exports. They target the European market, but they also have organic certification for other markets as well, so they can diversify their exports in that sense. Another company that I wanted to look at is from a different country, Apotec Bay from Egypt. Egypt, I think, is an interesting supplier as well for many botanicals to the European markets. Of course, much closer located to Europe, so in that sense, traditionally has been an important supplier for that. Long history of cultivation as well for immune boosting botanicals like hibiscus, but also Echinacea. Apotec Bay is a company that produces various extracts and essential oils. And what's interesting about them is that they have a very wide range of products, and they target a wide range of market segments, and can even do small supplies, large quantities of raw materials, using certifications to support what they do. And they also have a plant laboratory that tests plants throughout the production cycle, as well as an integrated supply chain, which means that they can really focus and ensure the quality and traceability of products throughout their supply chain, and ensure that the quality is consistent before they sell their products. Then the last company I wanted to share with you, so we have one company that's more the dried products, and we have one company that works with extracts and essential oils, also for food supplements. And then this is a company, Afrigetics, from South Africa, who work with several botanicals and specialty ingredients from African biodiversity, as well as their hero ingredient, Pelargonium sidoides, for the herbal medicinal products market. So they have a different target market, target segment. And also they show this in their website, how what's important about them and what they have that allows them to target this market. So they have a background in traditional medicinal knowledge, for example. They have a great quality control system, and they even on their website, they share overviews of some research they've done themselves, but also clinical trial information that they've gathered on their key products, which is authorized as a treatment of symptoms for the common cold. So really as a herbal medicinal product. And they've arranged their company in a way that sort of matches what is in demand on the market. Last thing that I wanted to go through with you before we invite Nick to join us is just a brief overview of what kind of products you might be competing with on the market. So first of all, of course, there will be other botanicals that you'll compete with. And these can be immune boosting botanicals, but also botanicals for different purposes that are added to products for various health benefits. Aside from other botanicals, there are two main categories to be aware of on the market that are really strong, have a strong market share. One is pre, pro, and postbiotics. These have experienced massive growth in the last few years. Probiotics are mainly used for the digestive system, but they are more and more recognized by consumers as also supporting a healthy immune system. And there has been a lot of growth in that category. Vitamins and minerals, as I mentioned earlier, are the biggest market share on the market. Vitamins and minerals can make health claims. For example, iron can contribute to the normal functioning of the immune system, is an authorized health claim for iron. There are always companies that, especially in the mainstream market segment, that use a lot of vitamins and minerals and less natural ingredients. But what is also interesting, I also heard from people, from brands that do have an interest in using natural ingredients, that they will use a vitamin or a mineral to be able to make a claim, such as this company uses vitamin C, for example, in the middle product. And then if they want to add natural ingredients, they add some that are already known among consumers to support immune systems, for example. So the claim will come from the vitamin, but natural ingredients can be added to build a better marketing story for that matter. That was my presentation. And now I actually very much would like to invite Nick Salter from Aduna to join us. Hi, Nick. Thank you for joining.
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are.
All over the world. Nick, as Thomas already mentioned, is the co-founder of Aduna, a company in the UK, working with specifically African superfoods. And I just wanted to first start, Nick, if you could briefly just give a background of your own experience, but also of Aduna that you founded. To start off with.
Sure. Well, my journey started about 15 years or so ago. I was in the aviation industry at the time, and I was at a conference in Dakar in Senegal, and I came down from my hotel to breakfast one morning, and I was served this drink called bouillie. And bouillie is a mix of water and sugar and milk powder and baobab fruit. And I knew the tree, but I'd never come across the fruit before, but it tasted great. And then I looked into the nutritional profile and properties and realized that, you know, this was something that was very healthy and could be good for us. There was nobody exporting it into Western markets at that stage. And indeed, it had the potential for social environmental impact. So that was the catalyst for starting Aduna. And if we wind forward to 2022 now, so Aduna is three things. We're a consumer brand, primarily selling superfoods into high street retail and online channels. We're also a bulk ingredients supplier, so this is supplying container quantities or tons of product into food manufacturers and distributors, etc. And we are also a baobab fruit producer, so we've been working in northern Ghana and Burkina Faso since 2014, working with around 3,000 women in 90 communities. So we really do stretch the full value chain from harvest all the way through to the end consumer.
Wow, very interesting. Well, it's good to hear from you as well, to get some of your insights. And some of the things that, I mean, we've talked about before as well, is really how before, because we talk all the time about the COVID-19 pandemic and what impact it has on especially immunity support products. But I wanted, if you could take us back to a little bit before that, and how do you think the market was developing towards immunity products before the pandemic?
Well, there's been a general trend over the past 5 to 10 years or so, I suppose, in what you would call functional foods. So this is a group of foods that one takes not just to be able to satisfy hunger, but for a particular purpose. So there are foods, and this is beverage as well, foods and beverages for stress relief, to help you sleep, for brain, for energy, for gut health, digestion. And this whole category has mushroomed in recent years. And one of those categories, and an important category, was immunity. So I don't think there was necessarily any particular preference of any one of these functions. Immunity was there in amongst all of those other functions, but understandably, because of COVID, it's really received a significant boost. And immunity is just something, it's a word that everybody has absorbed over the past couple of years or so. And the functional food category for immunity products has therefore become much higher in the consciousness.
Yeah. And do you see also with that change, of course, and indeed with immunity support getting this boost over the last few years, do you see also what is the role of botanicals specifically within immune support? And do you see that changing over the years in your experience working with Baobab and Moringa, for example?
Yeah, it's changing and developing all the time. I mean, one of the biggest drivers is simply awareness. You know, the prevalence of social media and YouTube and TikTok and all the rest of it means that consumers, to start off with, are actually being educated and being made more aware of these functional ingredients and what they can do and how they can do it. A really good example is turmeric, which for many, many years has been a staple in the cupboard, which you would bring out to be able to use in curries. And it was purely, you know, used to be able to flavor ingredients, whereas we know now that there are turmeric supplements, there are turmeric teas, there are curcumin extracts, etc. And all of this comes through the awareness that's being now available to consumers. The second area, I guess, is around antibiotics, which many people feel have been overprescribed in recent years. And so if you've been overprescribed antibiotics and your immune system is deficient, then you want a way to be able to boost that up in some shape or form. You've got Amazon and the availability of products which once upon a time, you know, you had to go into the supermarket or the health food store, and what was there was there, and that was your sole choice, whereas now the choice is huge. And another big driver, I think, that's also in the consciousness is this introduction of the concept of the human biome or the microbiome. And if listeners haven't heard of the microbiome, I'd encourage you to look it up on Google, because it's really becoming something that's very prevalent in people's minds. It's this concept that the body comprises all sorts of bacteria, viruses, microbes, etc. And so much, and these trillions and trillions of microbes effectively govern the overall govern our overall health, and a huge part of that is immunity. And so we're seeing all sorts of new products and solutions coming out to be able to help boost that microbiome.
Interesting. And do you think with all these developments that you're now describing, do you think after this whole pandemic, in the next 5 years, we've forgotten about it, or we're past it anyway? Do you think that these are trends that will continue? Is this really related to this pandemic, or has this been something that's was sort of simmering for longer as well?
No, I think it's on an upward trend, and it's only going to continue. And one of the things that we see, as well as awareness, is innovation. Like I mentioned with turmeric a second ago. Yeah. But we're also seeing a lot of new products or new ingredients which are almost being repurposed or potentially used for reasons that previously we weren't aware of. I mean, from my own experience with Baobab, for example, I was talking about the microbiome a second ago. There was an exercise done relatively recently to understand the overall diversity of flora, gut flora and microbiome of different population groups around the world. And one of the highest groups of collective groups of microbes within the human gut is from a tribe in Tanzania known as the Hadza, and one of their staples is baobab fruit. So this therefore prompts new research into understanding what is the potential of that sort of an ingredient within that environment. And you're seeing a lot of new products coming to market in the probiotic and prebiotic categories. So in probiotic, you've got all sorts of, yogurts. Kefir is something that we didn't have on the shelves a few years ago and now is readily available. Kombucha, these sorts of ingredients. And then you've got your prebiotics, which are feeding the microbes, as it were. And there's a whole range of new supplements and products which are coming out to be able to address that particular market.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say one other area, as I was going to mention around supplementation, is the realization with a lot of people around how dependent we are in many markets with what are known as the ultra high processed foods as well. So I think it's just in the UK, for example, 56% of the population get their calorie intake from ultra high processed foods. And it's these sorts of foods that are very nutrient poor, that don't contain the sorts of vitamins and minerals that we need to be able to keep us functioning properly. And therefore, there's the need for that sort of supplementation through other foods to be able to counter that balance.
Interesting. Yeah, and I was also wondering, because you mentioned indeed lots of different categories and examples of products. What do you think makes an ingredient or a botanical interesting to really boost an immune system? What does it need to be interesting for that?
I think on a factual level, if you have an ingredient that you are looking to promote for immune health, fundamentally it is going to have to contain one of the vitamins, minerals, proteins, etc., that is specific to be able to support immune health in the first place. So that could be vitamin C, that could be selenium, that could be zinc, that could be a protein, that could be iron, for example. So it's very important that you understand the nutritional profile of the ingredient that you're thinking of promoting, so that you know that it has got one of the immune boosting nutrients within it in the first place. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that even if the ingredient that you're looking to promote has got one of the immune boosting botanicals in it, ingredients in it, it has to be at a meaningful level. So you may have an ingredient that has iron in it, but an individual has got to take ½ a kilo of that product a day to be able to get that iron benefit. Well, that's not going to work. People want to be able to take a product where you can take 1 or 2 teaspoons, for example, and get their recommended daily allowance of iron or whatever that particular ingredient is. So number one, have you actually got one of these individual vitamins, minerals, nutrients in your crop in the first place? And then number two, is it available at a meaningful level that somebody can take on a daily basis without having to consume quantities?
Yeah, and being able to prove all of those things, I imagine, as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's
important that that nutrient profile can be fully justified.
Yeah. And if we talk about exporting these kinds of ingredients to the European market, what do you think are the main challenges that exporters like our audience might face, or what would your advice be to overcome those challenges?
I think I'll sort of divide that question into 2 parts, because I think it depends, first of all, whether you are looking to sell a finished product, an existing branded product, or whether you're looking to sell a bulk ingredient. If it's a branded product, obviously one of the primary hurdles is always going to be around distribution and finding buyers and retailers. To be honest, it can be very tough selling a branded product if you're in Europe already, finding the right distributors and finding the right retailers. So if you're looking at wanting to try to do it remotely from a country outside Europe, it's going to be even tougher. So be prepared to be particularly resilient if that's your aim. But I think one of the key things to mention around branded products is the legislation in Europe around labeling. So when it comes to health claims, something like immunity, for example, you cannot write on your product, boosts your immunity, will strengthen your immunity. Take this product and your immunity will increase tenfold. For any claim on any product, there is a very specific set of wording that has to be used. For immunity, it will be I think it's aids in the normal functioning of the immune system.
Supporting a normal functioning of the immune system, something like that. Yeah, and
That's
then
it.
there are specific minerals in that. Yeah.
And if you're observant and you look at the various different products supporting immunity on the market, you'll find that on the front of the pack, they're all using exactly the same wording. So you have to be able to justify, and you have to ensure that you can use that wording in the first place. You will find that there are some naughty companies that go onto Amazon or go onto eBay, and they'll make, you know, dramatic claims. But if you are a big buyer, and you have the opportunity to be able to distribute a product across a whole range of stores, etc., you're going to be very alert to the labeling on there, and you're going to reject products that don't meet that. So be very conscious of what you put on your label, because it has to fulfill the European labeling laws. The second area then was on bulk.
Yeah, more ingredients.
This is selling the raw ingredients. I think the most important point there is really around don't focus on price. Price is important, but it isn't the most important thing to a buyer. The most important thing to a buyer in our experience is risk management. Risk management means the quality of your product. If you have a product that is subpar, that is below quality, you can offer the cheapest price in the market, but you're not going to find buyers, because your product is going to go through a whole barrage of tests before it's purchased. If it's a smaller buyer and they're just wanting 5 kilos of this or 50 kilos of that, then they may not go through these processes. But if you're looking for traction in any shape or form whereby you're looking to move some volume, certainly in containers, you are going to be undergoing microbiology analysis. You are going to be undergoing heavy metals analysis. You are going to be undergoing pesticides analysis. If you're exporting from India, you're probably going to be undergoing ethylene oxide analysis, etc. All of these boxes need to be ticked, and you need to be able to show that you can export good quality and a consistent level. If you've got those boxes ticked, then you can move on to the other areas such as price. I would also stress organic is increasingly important, particularly when it comes to botanicals, where you are looking to be able to promote for health benefits. People are buying immunity products for their health. Therefore, organic tends to be far more popular rather than non-organic. In some markets, there's almost no market for a non-organic product, because you're competing with other organizations that are simply offering organic. And then the final element that I would mention as being increasingly important is the one around impact. This can be social impact, this can be environmental impact, but where you're looking for differentiators, how does my product, how does my crop differ from someone else's crop over there? If you can evidence the impact that it may be making, either to the farmers who are producing it or to the environment, if there's a story there that your buyer can be able to utilize as well, all of these things really help to differentiate and to be able to help you sell your product into those markets.
Perfect, thank you so much. Really, I think really interesting. I see that there are also some questions coming up through the question. So I want to ask you, Nick, to please stay on, so that I'm sure there are some of these questions that you are far better at answering than myself. And I wanted to ask Thomas to join us again, who has, I think, also been going through the questions that people were asking while we were both talking.
There are some interesting questions, and Let me just start at the top. There were already a question when you were talking, Jolanda, in the beginning.
Right.
And you were talking about the botanical supplements, and there was a question about the form they are imported by the Europeans. In which form? So is it the powder, the capsule, fresh, processed? Yeah, it's almost like, is it exported the same way as it is used? In which form is imported by Europeans?
Great question. In my experience, but please, Nick, feel free to add if you want. In my experience, it's not as much imported as capsules from exporting countries, more in the form of powders or sometimes extracts. It really depends on the product itself, for example, and how it's used in the market. But so there is usually some processing depending on the product. Fresh is not as common, but more like processing into a powder or into an extract or something like that. But then the next step into capsules or tablets, or if that's the end form that the manufacturer is going for, that usually happens within Europe. But this is going back to Nick's comment also on selling branded products. Having these like tablets, capsules, these kinds of products would be more like a branded product that you're selling in Europe as a finished product, which is a completely different category. Nick, anything to add from your side?
Yeah, I think what you will find is that a lot of the businesses that want to be able to sell these supplements or finished products, they've got to have their own angle. They've got to have their own unique selling point. They've got to have their own differentiator. So if there are already, 10 businesses on the market selling a particular supplement and they're all the same, then importing an 11th one isn't really going to make a difference. What they're going to want to be able to do is to be able to create something themselves. One thing that I would say is useful though, if you have got the facilities to be able to create tablets or capsules or finished products, then by all means it's very good to be able to advertise or to be able to promote that facility. But do it in the way that you can then react to the buyer's requirement rather than producing tons of a particular supplement and then hoping to find a buyer for them.
Great.
Like a very good tip. The next question is about, could you please provide some hints, strategy, sources of platforms, how to find agents in the Netherlands? Especially for new companies, it's important to find the right agents. It can also be for the UK, I think.
Any
first
markets
of all,
want to go to?
First of all, I would like, and I will send it through. I would like to emphasize that we have a study on tips to find buyers. You will find some tips there where to start, but maybe Jolanda or Nick has something to add on that.
Yeah, I mean, I know there are, I think in the study actually, Thomas, that will be published later, we do include also some suggestions of where to find agents, like sources to use. But I think what's most important before you start looking for an agent is to think about what do you want to use this agent for which products, which market are you focusing on, to really help you define what will be a good agent. So what kind of network should they have? What kind of market should they be operating in? As sort of background questions that you can then use to look for specific agents, because I'm sure once you start looking, there are many. So it's good to be able to know how to narrow it down.
And are there any popular platforms?
There is a platform, yes. I can see if I can find it and I can put it in the chat, because yeah, there is a platform that we can use.
One suggestion is, it's an obvious thing to state, but so many relationships between suppliers and buyers and agents, etc., happen at trade shows, and there are some very important trade shows in Europe where a lot of these relationships are made. There's one just coming up at the end of July, which is Biofak in Nuremberg in Germany, which is the world's largest organic trade fair. That's just one. There are many others, of course, in different countries, but nothing beats face-to-face at the end of the day in being able to strike up relationships and new commercial opportunities.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Most of the trade fairs are mentioned in our study tips to find buyers as well. Here I have a question. It's quite a long question. It's a question from Tanzania. They offer moringa powder and oil, baobab powder and oil, and most of the buyers from the European Union are looking for products with a certification, either organic or fair trade. How can we access the market without these required certificates? Or how can we access certification companies to work with us?
Okay, so there's two parts there. I think you mentioned organic and also mentioned fair trade. Fair trade, I suppose, it's a nice to have rather than a must have. It isn't going to prevent buyers from purchasing your product if it's good quality, if it's at the right price, etc. The organic part is not so easy. The reason that the products that you were mentioning, Baobab, moringa, etc. You look at the moringa market. Virtually all the moringa on the European market is organic by default. Everybody sells organic moringa. So if you are the producer with the non-organic moringa, you're going to be at the bottom of the queue. Unfortunately, it's almost the price of entry that you do have to have organic certified moringa in the first place to be able to find buyers. That's not so difficult as it sounds. In Tanzania, there will be an organic certifier. I'm not sure who the organic certifier is, but there will be an organic certifier or more than one certifier in Tanzania. Obviously, there's a price to be paid for the audit and to be able to get someone out to come out and make sure that you're adhering to organic principles, etc., etc. But provided you are and you're not spraying your moringa with pesticides, etc., then you pay the audit fee and you should get an organic certificate, and then hopefully that helps you over that particular hurdle.
So you're also saying if you don't have a certificate, then it's very hard to find buyers in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the individual product. So if you take something like, say something like cocoa, for example, or cacao, there is a market for organic cacao. There's an even bigger market for non-organic. So the organic element of the cacao market is a relatively small percentage. Then you've got other ingredients like moringa and baobab, which we just mentioned, whereby the market is 90%, 95% organic. In which case, if you are producing a non-organic product, then you are going to struggle. And one of the key reasons for that is that most consumers are buying these sorts of ingredients because of their health properties. What they don't want to do is to be able to risk purchasing a product that happens to be sprayed with pesticide, for example, when that gives them completely the opposite effect that they were aiming for in the first place. So in most products that are selling into a functional food health promoting market, organic status is usually very important.
Okay. There's a question, in case of new botanical food ingredients and not part of the union list, what is the procedure and time for approval?
And I'm guessing the union list, the novel foods union list is what is meant here. It really depends. So for novel foods, for those of you who don't know, novel food is a process, legislation within the EU, that if something is not consumed to a significant degree on the EU, to first prove that it's safe for consumption, which can be a very lengthy process and very time consuming, lots of investments that need to be made. within novel foods, there are two separate categories for food products that are good to mention. One is called traditional foods. So if you can show that a product has been traditionally consumed in your own country outside of the EU for, I think, 25 years from the top of my head, then you can apply for traditional foods status under novel foods, and then it can be, I think what they officially are saying, up to a year or something like that in terms of time to starting from the application and the end. But of course, you would need to supply a lot of the information yourself to prove that it's being consumed on a traditional level in your own country. If it's not a traditional food, so if you don't have this proof and it's like really a novel food, it can take, I don't know, Nick, you have this experience with Baobab, for example, so maybe you could share how long that took to get it approved.
Yeah, it has got a lot easier. I mean, Baobab got novel foods in 2008, and it took a lot of lobbying, and it was very expensive at the time. It wasn't us per se that undertook that. But things have changed and improved over time. The novel foods originally was really set up to be able to prevent some of these more, you know, laboratory produced foods entering the market, not to prevent traditional foods which have been consumed by millions of people all over the world for centuries to stop being sold into Europe. But there is an approval process, and it does take time. What I would suggest is the very first step is to go online, because there is a database that contains the status of all of these foods. So if you think that you have got an ingredient which isn't normally sold into Europe, have a look at the novel foods database. From memory, it's a traffic light system. It's either green, yes, you're okay, red, no, it's not approved, or there's an amber, under consideration. And then talk to the novel foods people directly to identify exactly what it is that's now required to be able to help make that food accessible. But bear in mind, it may very well take time. It may also take a little bit of money to be able to push it through.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And sorry, just I know we're talking about Europe here, but there is another big market not so far away called the US. They have a very different set of regimes. If you can't sell into Europe, you may find you can sell into the US. So that is an alternative route to consider.
Okay.
Yeah, good point.
A good tip. There's another question about the organic certification. Are some organic certifications providers more preferable than others, or are they all at the same level?
Well, they should all be at the same level, insofar that what you will find is in each country that there will be certifiers. But each of those certifiers have got to certify to a European standard. So there's a strict code which determines exactly what that standard is. I can't remember the precise name of it or the numbers involved, but again, online you can check that up. But each of those certifiers has to audit to that particular organic standard. So it's not as if one certifier will have one standard and one certifier will have another standard. They should all be certifying to exactly the same standard. So if you are in a country where there is a choice of certifiers, by all means contact 2 or 3 different certifiers, get quotes from them, and go for the one that's either cheapest or the one that you like, because they all ought to be doing a similar job.
Okay, there's already one GAP certified trainer who gave his context in our questions tab from Nigeria. I do not know the product myself, but the question is there an opportunity for noni from Africa?
Ooh, good question. I have heard of it, but more from the Morinda. No, it's a juice from what I remember.
Okay.
I must say, I would have to look into it a bit more in detail because it's to just look at it. I know it is being sold on the European markets already. I'm just doing a quick search, and yeah, you can find it in health shops around Europe. But a really specific market, yeah, a potential, I would have to dive into a little bit more detail.
Okay, that's.
Have you heard about it, Nick?
I know of it, but I have no experience of it, so I don't really have an opinion as to how what the prospects are for it.
Yeah, so that's an answer as well. It's relatively unknown in the European market.
Well, I think what's good for any of these, I mean, this study that we've done is really on the category of immune boosting botanicals, looking at different markets and how to access it. But it's always useful, and we always advise this for your specific products, to do a bit of market research yourself, to look at the market you're trying to reach. Are they selling it there? What kind of information are they sharing about it? What kind of companies are dealing with it? To also get some insights yourself into the market and to understand what it's used for, what the potential could be, and to also be able to share that with potential buyers when you're talking to them.
Yeah. So this is also like I think it's an important question. It's also regarding to the last question. Consumers look at the brand or the ingredients, and how to make consumers in Europe aware of new ingredients from Asia or Africa. That's also, I know it's for Baobab and Moringa, it's also the awareness is most often the first step. And I think companies like Aduna has a big part in that.
This is a subject I could talk about for a long time, so I won't. But I think it is very important for everybody to understand that there has to be a balance between supply and demand, and a lot of what we have done and continue to do is what we call demand creation. In other words, making consumers aware that these sorts of products exist and to create a market for them in the first place. So if you take products like, take an ingredient like Baobab, obviously, which I know extremely well, it grows in 32 countries around Africa. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of trees with a wasted harvest. There are so many producers in Africa. There are so many communities that could benefit if a market could be created. There is a market for it, but it is far, far, far smaller than the overall supply. The demand side is still very, very young. And as we were saying a second ago, it only received novel foods certification in 2008. So it has no history of being in the market. And that's one ingredient. There are many, many other ingredients that are indigenous to different countries, that are very popular in different countries, that are very little known within the European market. And there has to be a balance in that supply chain between the demand and the supply. So unfortunately, it isn't the case that you've simply got a product and therefore you'll be able to sell lots of it, because you're going to be reliant on whoever is doing the branding activity and the marketing activity to be able to help push it out there in the market in the first place and to be able to create that pull.
But it's something as an exporter that you can help the brands that you're working with, right? So it's more like.
But exactly. I mean, one of the things that I would always recommend, particularly with a product that's not so well known, is rather than thinking about a buyer-seller relationship in the strict sense of the word, I've got a product to sell and I need to find a buyer. Actually, what you really want is you want a partner. You want to be able to find a business in Europe that wants to work with you for the long term and to be able to develop that relationship so that you both benefit together. And then the buyer is obviously going to need to be able to do the promoting and the selling and the marketing and flying, waving the flag, etc. But at the same time can work hand in hand with you with regards to the quality requirements, with regards to the processing requirements, and at the same time highlight the impact that you may be making either environmentally or socially on the ground, and you work together to be able to move the market forward. And there are lots of businesses that have made the mistake of processing a huge amount of product, putting it in the warehouse, and then go looking for a buyer, only to be very disappointed. It's far more sensible to be able to put a toe in the water with regards to finding potential buyers or partners, as I say, to be able to work with, and then work together to be able to identify what sort of supply is required.
Thank you. I see we've already passed the time we had reserved for this webinar, but we have also many interesting questions. Let's just close with 2 more questions. One question is, I'm a producer of organic moringa from Pakistan. What certifications do I need besides organic certification for export to the United Kingdom? So it looks like he already has the organic certification. Does he need any more certifications to export to the United Kingdom?
So firstly, organic certificate, tick, that's great. The next thing after your organic certification is going back to what I was saying a little bit earlier on, is to make sure that your quality is absolutely spot on. So much moringa fails on microbiology. There's a lot of moringa producers in the world, but there's also a lot of poor quality moringa in the world. So make sure that your microbiology, your pesticide levels have been checked, your heavy metal levels have checked. As long as you've got that paperwork and you've got organic product and it's a good price, then you're in with a shout. Organoleptically, you need to make sure that that's good, by which I mean that it looks good visually, and it's also a very fine powder. You want to be less than 150 microns to have a really good fine powder. Over and above all of that, the crowning glory on top of that, if you can get to it, is a food safety certificate, such as BRC, for example, which are not easy to be able to get to, these food standards certificates. But if you were wanting to sell to a very large business, or a business that's ordering very, very extensive quantities, they may very well want to see an international food safety certificate of sorts.
Thank you. So you're talking about the minimum residue levels, which is a part of the legislation from the European Union, and they're the same for the UK, still the same, right? Yeah,
there's no, although unfortunately Brexit has happened, the overall legislation in terms of requirements for food is pretty much identical between UK and Europe still.
Yeah. Okay. One more question. It's about Baobab. Let's close with that. Is there a network of Baobab processors in Africa?
There is a burgeoning organization which was founded a couple of years ago, which I'm part of, which is called the African Baobab Alliance. If you go to, I think it is africanbaobaballiance.org, I should know that. You'll find a little bit about it. It is a very it's a small organization. It isn't formal. It hasn't got funding. We're applying for funding at the moment. But by all means, do please get in touch, because there is a move to be able to attempt to be able to formalize that. But at the moment, there isn't a list or a formal network of Baobab suppliers across Africa. It's still a very new industry.
Okay, thank you. So the African Baobab Alliance, look for that. So let's just close it for today. We're already past the time. First, I want to tell you all that we're just finishing the study on immune boosting botanicals. It's the study exporting immune boosticals to Europe. that will be on our website in about 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks, I guess. So if you have a subscription on our market information newsletter, you will be informed on that. If you do not have a subscription yet, please do. For the rest, I want to thank Jolanda for her presentation today, and also Nick. We really appreciate your input today. So thank you. And of course, I want to thank all of the participants that you joined us today, and we will send you an email in a few days with a link to the recording and also with the presentation of Jolanda. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.